Let's get in now and start to sculpt the rib cage. I want to take this rib cage and really make a nice, realistic set of ribs out of this. So I'm going to turn solo on so I don't see everything else. And I've already kind of sculpted some elements here. Let's make sure symmetry is on. Okay, check our measurements. Move, come out. Yeah. So we were saying before 1 to 1.25, okay, for the rib cage. The neck is going to get a lot smaller though. That we're going to take care of right now. And I'm just going to pull this in, get that tapered around that first vertebrae, or first rib, sorry. And then we're also going to make sure that we've got a bit more of a slant. Okay, there's some peculiarities with the rib cage, but in general you're going to always have it at this kind of slant that we have drawn. But notice that we don't have that put here. And that's because with the shadow box you can't really get that well. It's not as straightforward. So that's fine. I just come in with move, and we're going to move it up. Also want to come in and add a little bit of gravity here. Just a little bit. Okay, I'm not changing proportions in any major way, but I've raised and I've given it a little bit of a belly, like it's being pulled down with weight. And we're in good shape. I feel pretty happy about this. There's one problem we're going to run into, I think, and that is there's several processes we can use, but if we keep these sculpted ribs on there, we can be in a little bit of trouble. So I'm going to still keep them as a bit of a guide, but I'm going to smooth them out so that they're almost completely gone. Okay, they're still there a little bit, and this might cause some problems, but we'll see. Okay. I want to walk you through a thinking process. That's what we're going to do. I'm not going to show you right now exactly how we do this. What I'm going to do is show you how I would approach this kind of complexity. Because we want individual ribs. I mean, we want what we have here with the female anatomy figure. Let's just load that. Get rid of the light box. You want this with all the bells and whistles, these little holes in here. Okay, and then all this stuff going on, and you know, we want that, and we can get that. That's not a problem. But I want to walk through the thinking process to see, you know, how we can look at the tools to make that happen. You already saw slice brush, so Control Shift, click, select slice curve. Let's turn polyframe on. Make sure that you go to polygroups and just say group visible. Okay, and what that's going to do is just group everything the same. You know, it's not a separate piece of geometry, it's just one piece. And that's going to allow us to create groups from scratch. So does it make sense to come in here and start to cut this out? I don't know. Let's just do a little bit. Notice that we're able to lock to this angle, and it's even telling me what the angle is, 75 degrees, or 15 degrees, depending on where you're looking. I'm not counting the ribs right now. I'm actually just experimenting, because I know I'm going to run into a problem here at the bottom. Okay, how many undos do I have? 62. So I've selected Edit, Undos. So I know I'm okay. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I got to fit a lot more in below that. But let's see how this works. So geometry, I can turn group on, Dynamesh on, and all of these become separate parts. Alright, let's get in and adjust the groups even better. Okay, Slice curve is not working with symmetry, which is kind of a problem. Let's see, I'm trying to do is separate the manubrium from everything. And that also separated the spine. So there's definitely some potential there. But things get weird when we're looking at the 6th and the 7th and the 8th and how they kind of come off of each other. So in my view, slice curve is going to be really good for these simple shapes, but it's going to lack in the complexity that we need here. So we have to introduce ourselves to a couple of other features. We're going to probably use masks to make this happen. And I'm going to open geometry, I think it is, and masking, and see what we can do. There's a couple of features. Edge, loop, mask, border. Okay, there's also groups, loops. And of course we'll be using Dynamesh. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some sort of border around the mask. We can use these guys. We can also come down here to polygroups, and we can be using group masked. Now, a mask allows us to draw on the surface. So we just come in and we say, well, I already know the manubrium. Okay, and we already know, let's just put a notch in there, and this is the sternum, xiphoid process. So it's 2 parts. Okay. Manubrium, sternum, and I'm not even going to bother with that, although I do try it. Xiphoid process, where you get hit and you get the wind knocked out of you, that little tiny thing. Don't really ever want to get hit there. Now, let's mask out our first vertebrae. This is actually what we did earlier in the sculpt, but then we didn't get this far. So, what are we at? 2, 3, 4 goes straight, 5 goes down, 6 goes down, and then 7, and then 8. Okay, so let's just get these guys. So that's 3, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and we've got the false ribs to also think about. And clean that up. Pressing Control and Alt. Okay, throw these guys in, just so they're there. Cool. This may or may not fit with what we want at the front, but if you've got the number in there, you might give yourself a break here, because that's sculpting. You can adjust this and that shape with a sculpt. Alright, so now, as I said, we've got a couple of options. Once you've got your ribs there, you can come in and say Group Masked. Let's turn Polyframe on. And that's done a pretty awesome job, I think, of setting out a little bit of a group. why don't we just go into Dynamesh and see what happens? We've got group on, Dynamesh on. Let's clear the mask. And let's just see what it does. Well, really wrangled these guys. But this is okay, this is okay, okay, and okay. Let's close out, or let's just Control-Shift click this and see if I can see anything useful out of that. And not good, right? Not really working. So undo. Come back in here. Let's come in and edge loop the mask border. Polyframe. Pretty cool. Alright, so we've edge looped that mask border. I'm going to undo that. And I am going to make sure that there's a separation between the sternum and the rib. And do I want to mess with that sixth a little bit like that? And then make sure there's a separation, and make sure there's a separation. You're going to have to exaggerate it, but if you put it in there, then it's going to allow you to create and kind of push them together a little bit better. So okay, little cleanup. Edge loop mask border. Now all of these guys are separated out parts and pieces. So now let's take a look at the way that's probably going to be the most efficient way to create the ribs. And this is actually an old school way to create the ribs, and old school way to actually create shapes, because you can't really use mesh extraction. There are just some issues with it. So we have still gone into geometry, and we've gone to edge loop mask border. We can clear the mask at this point because basically we have a poly group that we want to work with. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to delete unnecessary polygons. So we have a simple shell here, and that works. We're going to go to geometry, and there are no subdivision levels, so you click delete hidden. Okay, the next thing you do is you go to morph targets, you store morph target. And then the next thing you do is go and open up the deformation palette and take inflate and just set it in the negative direction. So I set mine to -27. Alright, there's some artifacting, some problems, but I think we'll be able to manage. Now the next thing you do, and this is the old school part, you go to morph targets and you say create a difference mesh. That creates another mesh all the way up here at the top. That should be, if everything was done correctly, it should be a 3D version of what you previously had as just a simple plane. Now if you're looking at this and it looks weird, it's because it does look weird. It has flipped normals. So I'm going to go to display properties and choose flip, just to invert them back. Okay, there's some kind of strange polygon right there. I'm not sure what that is. Let's turn double on, and it seems to be extra polygons. So we can just come in here and say polygroups, auto group. Okay, that's going to separate each one of these things out. Control Shift click, Control Shift click. Okay, and then geometry delete hidden. So now everything is set as a separate poly group. We've got all of our ribs, all 12 of them, and we're ready to get in there and start to sculpt them and develop their general shape. It might be a good idea to come in here and try merge similar groups. See if we can get the left and right to work. So it worked in some cases, but not all. So let's come in here and make sure that left and right are grouped. So group visible. The way you do it is you just press Control Shift, click one group, Control Shift, click and drag, and invert. Control Shift click the other group. Control Shift click and drag, and then group visible. And one more to do. Okay, so we've got that relatively well done. Not too many problems, and it's an older part of the matrix, but even Dynamesh, the Slice, none of them really are able to get in their mesh extraction and make it as simple as this. So I'd love to show you a new way, but this is actually a pretty solid way to do it.